All right, guys, welcome back to another episode of Within Tolerance. This is episode 9. We're almost to 10, which is crazy that we've been doing this for almost 10 weeks now. Once again, joined by Dylan, and today we don't have any special guests, but last week, if you haven't already, you have to check out last week's episode 8. That's with Dan Rudolph, and that was by far one of the coolest talking experiences, and it was like an hour and a half of just learning about different processes, especially with the tiny parts that he makes, and just I learned a lot. I don't know about you, Dylan, but I learned a lot, and I'm probably gonna have to re-listen to that one shortly here.
Yeah, it was really cool, and I felt like I could have picked his brain for probably another hour. I didn't want to take up that much of his time, but I just kept learning so much, and it was really cool to hear how different his shop is and the way that he thinks about things, and it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, a lot of different problems for a lot of just different things going on that a lot of people don't think about with machining.
Totally, yeah. Well, I've never done any medical work either, and so there's all of the considerations that go along with that kind of customer too that are interesting to hear about.
Yeah, I mean, I know there's all sorts of certifications for that type of work. I'm sure I don't know all of them, but like it's like ISO, but like a lot more than that.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
So that's pretty cool. But how is I mean, because we haven't really talked about each other for 2 weeks now because we had Dan on last. So how is everything going at your shop?
Good. We've kind of 180'd from how it was the weeks before. We're pretty slow right now. I've got like one customer job that we've been sitting on for a while that I'm going to knock out this week, and then I feel like maybe we have one other job, one design job that I'm working on. But like we're super slow, which is nice because it gives us some time to take care of maintenance and some projects we've been sitting on for a while.
Yeah, you got those lights in the brother. That looks awesome.
Oh my goodness, it is so nice. Like it is literally night and day. Like it
Yeah.
is. The lights are super cheap on Amazon. They look like copies of the Haas lights, if not made like in the same factory.
Yeah.
And I think it was maybe 15 or $20 for both of them. And then the real cost of the whole thing was a power supply and wiring and like a relay setup so we can actually trigger it from the IO board.
So is that a button that you can actually hit on like the control itself?
Yeah. So the way that the brothers work is they, even as far back as my A0 control, is when you hit the button, it just energizes two contacts on the IO board. And unfortunately, the reason mine's not hooked up to the button right now is that on the old boards, that was a 100-volt AC trigger. And the lights just ran right off of that, and they were 100-volt AC as well. Whereas all the new ones are DC triggers, and then so my relay when I first hit the button was just buzzing and the lights were flashing like crazy.
Oh,
So
geez.
right now I've just got it hooked up directly to the power supply. So anytime the machine power is on, the lights are on, which is totally fine for now. And then I've got a new relay on the way. It was, an $8 mistake, which I learned, and now I know what's going on, and not a big deal. But super easy to wire in, super easy. Like there was already additional standoffs in the cabinet to add a DIN rail to like have the power supply mount on and the relay. It's more or less made for that. Like the drivers on the boards on the IO board doesn't really have enough power supply to power more than one light, and so like a lot of brothers end up having an additional power supply that you add in the cabinet and run more lights from.
Okay. But I mean, from the Instagram picture, it looks like a surgery room in your brother now.
Yeah,
It
it's so
is.
bright. There's like zero. Well, there's not any hot spots, which is really nice. Like there's enough of a spread of light that there's no like real reflective areas, and then there's
Okay.
no dark spots either, which is fantastic.
One of my pet peeves is like the older Haas machines have those like yellow lights. I think
Yeah,
those are like so nasty looking. Like I love the LED, just the white light.
same. Yeah, well, my kitty has a yellow light, and it's only in one
Yeah.
corner, and so now I'm trying to find ways to wire in some more lights there. Unfortunately, like the brother, if you look in the cabinet on any brother, even the brand new ones, and there's like tons of room and there's like almost no electronics in there. And you look at like my kitty or any old Fanuc controller or anything like that, and like the cabinets are just packed to the gills. So I'm gonna have to either find some place in the back of the machine to throw another little enclosure or something like that. Just I'll probably just wire it so that it's on whenever the machine is on. I'll just tap the two legs of the three phase just right off of the normal switch.
Yeah. No, if you could get that same light in your Kitamura, that would be awesome.
Yeah, it's like such a low cost upgrade, but when you're constantly setting things up and looking at indicators and looking at parts and all that stuff, it's like, oh man, it is so nice. And
Yeah.
we've been literally like there was no light in the Brother before, and so setting things up in there or running parts was like a real pain in the ass. So I'm really happy with it.
Yeah. I mean, that is your environment, is sticking your head in those. So you got to make as much light as you can. I hate shadows and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's definitely been tough. So now that that's done, now the ceiling or roof or top cover, whatever you want to call it, that's my next goal for the Brother, is to get that all catted out and then have my friend plasma cut it up.
That'll be another good little upgrade.
Yeah, definitely. And then we just got the Mist Away for the kitty a week ago, and
Okay.
then realized once we got it, I didn't realize how big the cutout is that they want. It's like what, 6x8 or 6x10 or something like that. And
Did you get the mist away, you said?
yeah, the same one you
Okay.
have,
Okay.
the 700.
I think so, yeah.
And then so looking up on top of the kitty, there's just no place to put it really. So I'm gonna buy the 6-inch manifold and either the machine stand or the floor stand, and then just cut a 6-inch hole in the enclosure, because I've got room for that, but I don't have room for the whole thing to be sitting up there, at least directly on top of the enclosure.
Okay. I know with mine, I need to check. There's some, because there's a bunch of screens in that, and I know some of them you have to like periodically take out and just like rinse with like a garden hose. And I haven't done that, and I've probably had it for at least 6 months, so I probably should look into that. But no complaints other than that. It definitely helps.
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, it seems like you're not the first person I've seen with one, and like everybody who has bought one seems really happy with it. And for the price, I mean, the next nearest one I think is double, if not a little more.
Yeah, I think mine was like 1,200.
Yeah, I think yeah, I think that's about what we paid. And like
Yeah.
we got one recently at work with one of our brothers that was over double that, I think.
Okay. I mean, the guy's super nice. I emailed him beforehand and I was asking him a bunch of questions. I even asked him just for a discount and he was like, "Yeah, sure, why not?"
Oh wow, that's awesome.
Yeah. So he's a super. I think he was a machinist and he kind of came up with this or wanted a more affordable version, and that's kind of how it started for him.
That's great. Yeah, I mean it seems so far like a really nice unit. I mean, obviously I haven't used it yet, but
Yeah.
it seems really nice and well built and all that stuff, and really well packed and shipped. So I can't complain.
Yeah. No, I think once you get that and then your roof on your brother, and if you could get more lights in your Kitamura, you'll be really cooking.
Yeah. Now that I've seen those lights lit up, there's no doubt in my mind that I'm gonna add some to the kitty, because it's just,
Yeah.
I think it was under $150 for the whole setup.
Oh yeah. I mean, even if it was 500, it's worth it.
Right. Yeah, and then, like it was. Yeah, I want to say it was like $100 for the power supply, and that was the biggest cost. And then the rest is like cheap Amazon lights, wiring from McMaster, and the relay was like $8. I think the relay mount was another $5 or $6, something like that. So
Yeah, that's nothing then.
yeah. But
Yeah.
besides that, yeah, it's been kind of slow. But after 4 or 5 weeks of absolutely nonstop stuff, it's been kind of nice to catch up on the little things that have been nagging all of us at the shop. So
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean,
What
I
about you?
remember the first couple weeks of the podcast, you were kind of slow, and then you hit that busy period, and now you're kind of, because I remember you talking about like all these upgrades you wanted to do.
Yeah, and really, I'm thankful for a little bit of a slowdown. Like between my day job and being that busy, I was feeling like I was losing my mind a little bit. So
Yeah.
it was a nice little break, and it seems like things will pick up here shortly. So I mean,
That's
that's
good.
really been like historically kind of how our business is run. Anyway, is we will have like a month and a half of craziness, and then a few weeks of calm, and then it dips right back into being crazy.
Yeah. That's good though.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I wouldn't mind a little more consistency and
Yeah, oh
not so
yeah,
many spikes on both ends of the spectrum. But that from everything I've experienced in this business, that's not really how it works, at least in
that yeah,
prototyping.
yeah, for sure. That's hard to come by.
So, what about on your end? How are things going?
Well, my machine is running right now, and it's been running for the past, I'd say, 48 hours straight. Um, so
Another mold, huh?
yeah, multiple actually. So I had a bunch that I wanted to remake, and I just wasn't happy with how they injected and how the parts were turning out. So I kind of redesigned things, reorientated some things, and I've been cutting those for the past couple of days. So it's mainly like I'll do one during the day that's like 6 to 8 hours, then one right before I go to bed, and then right when I wake up, and then like I'll just keep knocking them out. So I just reset it for the second half at like 3 hours ago. So that'll run until 1 in the morning. And then before I go to bed at 1, I'll put a new one in there and it'll run till like I wake up.
Wow, that's
Yeah.
insane.
Yeah. So my little spindle's running at 10K for a long time.
Pretty nice to have the machine right there too.
Oh, it's super nice. I mean, I couldn't have done it any other way.
Yeah, yeah, that's fantastic. I mean, like, for
Yeah.
me, like if I want to leave the shop and come back, like it's a whole different thing.
Oh, yeah. I never asked you, how far is your shop from like where you live?
I'm about 20-25 minutes,
Okay.
something like that, because I live on like the exact opposite side of town as my business partner. And so when we were
Okay.
looking for a shop, we kind of looked for something in the middle. And so I think the shop's about 15-20 from him and 20-25 for me.
So a little bit longer for you.
Yeah, yeah, but it there's not a whole lot of commercial, like industrial real estate in the middle of the town, and like I live more or less in the middle of Tucson, and he lives on the other side of the highway up further, and so it's only faster for him because he can jump on the highway. Like I've got no highway or anything like that I can jump on.
Okay. And then where is like your day job in comparison?
My day job is, I think, 3 miles from where I live.
Oh, okay.
Like I roll out of bed and I'm at work more or less.
Jeez.
Yeah, so it's a trade off. I really really enjoy being that close to my day job, and the drive to my shop's not really all that bad. There was some really nasty construction on like the main roads to get there for a while, but now all that's cleared up, and yeah, it's not too bad. I can't complain. I've had 45 minute to an hour commutes at every day job before this one, so it's like a really really nice change.
Yeah, my first job at that Swiss shop was like 45 minutes an hour, and it was nice, to some extent cuz I like driving and it's nice to listen to podcasts or music, but like still that's a lot of time.
Yeah, yeah. When I Up until this year, I have daily ridden a motorcycle pretty much since I turned 17,
Oh,
18.
really?
And so, like, half the year it's totally fine. And then half the year, 45 minutes and 110 is like dangerous.
Yeah.
So, it's really nice being this close. Like, even if I decide to ride and I'm wearing my full suit and everything, like, I don't have a chance to get all that hot.
That's good though.
Yeah.
Yeah, but other than that, machine running molds, I've got tools on the way. Should be here tomorrow for those castings.
Oh, fun.
Um, yeah, so carbide drills, got some taps. I actually stopped by the customer and they gave me some of their taps to try,
Yeah, I
and
saw your
so
post on that.
yeah, so that's gonna be nice. It's nice that they were just like here you go. If you break them, buy them, and I'm like that's totally fine with me. Um, and then let's see, I actually had to pick up another key cutter from them because there's a 60-degree like edge on there, and then there's also just like some flats, and I didn't have the key cutter to cut those flats on in that part, so they gave me that and a tool holder for that, so that's awesome.
Oh wow, that's crazy because that
Yeah,
was going to be like the big expense.
yeah, and that's the thing. I mean, I think both of them were Harvey brand, and I mean, they're a big tool, and it's all solid carbide. I don't want to know what that costs. Maybe 150, $200.
Yeah,
Um,
probably. I'm
so
sure it's right around there.
yeah, so I'm hoping I don't, knock on wood, I don't break it. I'm just gonna run it super conservative. They gave me their fusion file that they ran, so I'm just gonna use that.
Oh, geez, that's super nice. Like even if there wasn't speeds and feeds in it, just to be able to like jump in and have a good representation of the casting,
Yeah,
that's like half the battle right there. Some places, if they're still doing castings, like, and they're not new castings, the drawings, there might not even be a 3D model sometimes. So that's pretty awesome.
yeah. Luckily, I have a model of the actual part and then of the actual casting. Um, Even though I don't really need it. And then I had an idea for fixturing part of it because there's a 3/0 part. Um, and they actually, I was just like, while I was there, I was like, hey, can I take your fixture just in case mine doesn't work out? And they're like, oh yeah, sure. So like, that's what I mean by like, these guys are like the ideal customers. Like, I mean, they've ran them before. They're just kind of overwhelmed with other parts they have to make, so they're just kind of setting me up for as a backup if they need it down the line.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, overflow work like the is like a blessing for a small shop like ours.
Yeah. And
So
so those tools come in, and got to get those running tomorrow if they come in, hopefully. And then let's see. I've got those coasters from a fellow listener. I've got to make those. So I ordered material yesterday for those. So that'll be in like, I have to pick it up in like 4 days or something like that. So probably next week. Um, but yeah, so like this week it'll be castings. Next week it'll be those, and then the following week I have those other aluminum parts I have to work on. So it's kind of like stacking up, and I'm really worried that there's this one customer of mine, this the second larger customer of mine, that they've been kind of like hinting at this big order, and I'm like kind of like twiddling my thumbs, like don't place it yet type thing. Um, and I feel like I'm gonna get an email next week or later this week. I don't know, but we'll see.
yeah, I mean, Murphy says that it'll come at the least opportune time. So
Yeah,
I'm
so
sure right as everything hits, that's when you'll get
yeah,
your email.
yeah. So and they're normally in a rush, which is fantastic, but it is what it is.
yeah, yeah,
I'm
yeah.
hoping to get. That's the nice thing is because I work weekends. And most of these companies don't, so you can kind of like, oh, I'll have it done by Monday. Knowing that you have Saturday and Sunday to work on it. Um,
Yeah, yeah, people seem to really appreciate that. That's for sure. Working nights and
yeah,
weekends, and the quick turn stuff. That's especially nowadays. That seems like that's where you really pick up customers is good quality A and B being able to turn stuff around really quick.
yeah. So I'm hoping. And then I just ordered. Let's see, material for like just cutting some blank soft jaws because I'm like almost out of that. Um, what else? I'm trying to think. Got a couple of like my own projects I'm working on. I don't want to share too much about those yet. I posted about it on my Instagram stories a little bit, but other than that, kind of keeping it quiet.
Oh, cool.
So,
I look forward to
yeah,
seeing more.
yeah. So that's kind of what I'm up to. Kind of curious and a little scared to use these key cutters, and especially in a casted steel part, but we'll see.
Yeah, no, I think between their speeds and feeds, and like if it's a Harvey tool, you can just call them. Like
Yeah,
I told you, and that they seem to really know their stuff. I mean, I would hope they would, but like my interactions with them is they asked the right questions and seemed really knowledgeable. So I think between those two resources, you should be completely fine.
yeah. And it's only 50 parts, so it's nothing crazy. So hopefully the tools will last for that. I know they are slightly used, but should be fine.
Yeah. Well, and you had said I think the first time you were quoting them that they had like 100 or something of them. So I would assume that that tool you have has made it through 100 parts.
Yeah, I don't know about that actually because I went to their place and they had, because it's two different part numbers, and let's see, it was 200 cast parts total because they can use it for each part number. And I think they had like, out of the 200, I think like 120 of them were bad casted or something. They had like pits in them. Um,
Oh man.
yeah, and I just remember them like showing me like this one little box and then this big box. And I'm like, oh, that's a lot of parts. And they're like, yeah, those are all the bad ones. And I'm like, whoa. Um, so I had to pick through and get 50 good ones to take home. But
Jeez.
so they're kind of like, okay, what the heck, guys? So they're kind of in this phase of, because they have like a deadline in like 3 weeks to have all these assemblies built. And, this obviously isn't helping.
Yeah, yeah. I'd be surprised if they have enough to cover their assemblies now.
Yeah.
That's that's a terrible scrap rate for castings. Like porosity happens, and like even top level castings, you'll still see them in, but man, not that much. That's bizarre. I wonder what
Yeah.
happened.
It's a scary, ratio.
Yeah.
So they're trying to and what's weird is they had done casted parts, the same parts beforehand, but just a smaller quantity, and they were all fine. So I don't know what happened, but
Yeah, it could be as easy or as bad as it was a Friday at 4 o'clock when they started doing their castings or something.
yeah, that's so true though.
Somebody wasn't paying attention and did something stupid and made a whole bunch of bad ones and just shipped them along. I mean, sometimes, yeah, I've seen inclusions and porosity that you're like, how did, like, even if you were blind in one eye, you should be able to see this before it goes out. And people still send it along. So
Yeah, like you said, it could just be one employee's tired or whatever.
yeah, yeah. So that sucks for them, but I'm still glad you got the work regardless, and that there was enough for you to get through your side of the order.
Yeah, so we'll see. It's one of those things, starting out, like when I first got my machine and I first got those aluminum parts from this guy, you know, not really. I've never done job shop work. This was 8 months ago, or almost 9 months ago, and you kind of look at this part and you're like, okay, I know it can be made because obviously it's sitting right in front of me, but there's always that question of, okay, how am I going to make it? And
Right.
then for me, especially starting out, it's kind of like now I have that moment right off the bat when I see that blueprint or I see that file, and I'm like, crap, I don't know how I'm going to make this thing. And then you kind of get stressed out, but then it's like, hold on. Like, I've gone through worse parts before. Like, you just can't overthink it. Like, okay, it's not that hard.
Yeah. I mean, there's always a way to do everything with enough time and money, and it's
Yeah.
always just how much can you get both of those numbers down
Yeah.
for a small shop.
Yeah.
I don't think I ever asked you, how did you get into doing job shop work from doing Lego molds? Because you didn't buy your machine with the intent of doing job shop work, did you?
I so I bought the machine specifically, like you said, more for the mold work, but I also was like, at the same time, I'm gonna have downtime, so I might as well start trying to find some connections to make parts. Because in school, I really enjoyed making, just different parts, doing setups. I love doing setups and stuff like that. Um, and I got the machine. Let's see, I got the machine up and running like November of last year, and I had started making molds and like the razors and stuff like that. And I honestly can't remember, but word spread to a guy that came to my school, talked to my instructor, and mentioned me. And like then I went into an actual job interview with the company. And at the time, I was already thinking about quitting my current job and just going full time myself.
Hmm.
Um, and these guys were willing to pay me a lot more than the other job. And they were like, hey, why don't you quit there and come here? And I'm like, how about this? You guys need parts. I just got a machine. How about I do what I want to do here and not work for anyone but myself, and I can help you guys. And they're like, oh, yeah, okay.
Damn, that's a bold
Um,
move. I'm glad it worked
and
out.
and it was kind of funny because I remember going into the job interview and I had known they had a Haas, but I hadn't seen it yet. We were just like in their conference room, and I kind of hinted at it. I'm like, so I heard you guys have like an old Haas, and they're like, yeah, we got a Haas like VF4. And he was like, I was hoping he would ask me about Haas, like, are you familiar with them? And he did. He was like, are you familiar with Haas? I'm like, yeah, I just bought one actually. And they're like, wait, what? And I'm like, yeah, it arrives in a week.
Oh my goodness, that's great.
So that was my little sales move right there.
That's awesome. So is that one of your larger customers?
Yeah, I would say it was this one was the first one, and then the second one that I'm kind of waiting for that large order is actually their friends. Like it's two father son companies, and the sons know each other,
Oh wow,
and they both happen to have machining related products.
huh? That's really cool.
So it was just kind of small world.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah.
That's
So
huh. That's really interesting. That's a like I said, a really bold move to kind of go into a job interview and be like, actually, I reject your job, and you should give me work.
well, it didn't happen like that, but
Yeah, I
that was
mean,
the
it
gist
did. It
of
just
it.
didn't. You didn't say it like that.
Yeah, I hope I did it. Yeah, but no, it was yeah, like you said, a bold move looking back on it. So I don't know how I've made it work, but it's happening. So
Yeah, I mean that's what matters. Is
yeah.
it definitely takes bold moves to get a small shop going. Like you can't pussyfoot around and expect things to just come to you for sure.
No. But I also agree with some of the other guys like Saunders that mentions like stay at your day job as long as you can type thing.
Oh
Um,
yeah, yeah, it's really nice job security. Like when it's slow right now, and like all of our machines are paid for. Like yeah, I want work, and I'm looking and contacting people, but I'm also not like, well, I've got a machine payment to make in 2 weeks,
exactly.
like, and stressing out about that. So it's kind of, I mean, Dan kind of hinted at it last week. Like there's pros and cons to buying a new machine or not, and like I feel like you're kind of a rare case of like being able to just buy it outright, whereas most people have those payments and it's stressful. Like
Oh
I've got
yeah.
good friends that have payments on machines, and they're always like, oh, I got to get at least this much work in, and like for me, it's like I got to pay rent, which isn't really that much, and I got to pay electricity, and like that's small potatoes really to make my month equal.
Yeah. I mean, it's also different for like me and you, um, dare I say, being younger. But like, we don't have like a full family with kids or anything yet. And so that makes things easier for us. But if you had like, kids, a wife, and car payments and house payments, and then you're trying to like get a machine payment tacked on top of that, you can start to see how a lot of these people get discouraged really quickly.
Oh yeah, yeah, I completely agree. I mean, it sounded like from some of the questions that people put up for Dan that that's one thing they really admired about him was the fact that he does have an entire family and started a small shop. And from what he said, it wasn't comfortable at first. So it's definitely not the easy path, but that's if that's what you want to do, that's how you got to make yourself happy.
Yeah, it's not for everyone for sure.
No, I mean it's not even for me 4 years ago or 5 years
Yeah,
ago. Like
yeah,
if I was trying to do it 5 years ago, I wouldn't have the work ethic or the care or anything like that to do what I do now. It really has taken mental leaps and bounds to be where I'm at, like where I'm like, oh yeah, I'm gonna work a 20-hour day, and like, yeah, I'll be tired or whatever, but at the end of the day, I'm home in my bed and start it all over again tomorrow. It's like, it is what it is.
yeah. The business side of things, I think, matures people very quickly.
Yeah, well, I
And
mean, I think it's you either do or you die as a company.
yeah, really. And you learn a lot really quickly if you're not on the right path.
Yeah, yeah, there's nothing easy about this business, and
No.
it eats people really quickly if you show any weakness.
Yeah. I mean, business in general is not easy, let alone manufacturing, which is extremely cutthroat.
Right, right, exactly. Like everybody wants it yesterday and perfect, and like for the lowest price possible. Like, oh, I can get it in China for $6. Like, why
Yeah.
can't I get it from you? It's like, well, because
Yeah.
I want to get paid.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly. Well, yeah, like I was talking to another buddy of mine, and we were kind of talking about having good customers and just having that strong relationship. That one of that second customer I mentioned, they had sent me some parts. This was a while ago, and I think if I sent you a picture, you'd remember this part. It's like I'd have to send you a picture. I don't know how to describe it, but they had sent me the RFQ and were like, "Can you quote this?" and they had mentioned to me, they're like, yeah, we had this quoted for like $7 a piece from this other shop, and they told me themselves, like, I don't even know how they're making it for $7 a piece. So just quote it normally, Peyton. I'm like, okay, and I quoted it for like 25, and they went with me for whatever reason, but it just shows that like the fact that I was doing on time deliveries and all that stuff really added up, because I mean that's a huge price difference.
Yeah. Well, and I
So,
mean, a lot. I won't say a lot. There are shops out there that will quote things and then requote them through China. So they're just the pass through agent. Like I've been put up against shops
oh,
like that before. Like for a couple months, maybe 6 months, we were getting work through this guy who he's like a machining work broker kind of. He's like the physical representation of like manufacturing.com or something like that.
okay,
So he takes a cut and he brings work into your shop. And one of the things he sent us were these I want to say they were 304 or 303 studs. They were more or less just like custom long big screws. And I quoted them out, and I quoted them really aggressively, and like anticipated having to build some really complicated fixtures and buying a bunch of inspection equipment to do them right. And he came back and he was like, "Oh well, the other shop said that they can do them for $2 a piece, or like $1.50 a piece." And I was like, "I can't. I've like gotten 6 quotes now for material, and I can't get material that cheap." He's
yeah,
like, "Well, like they promised that they're sourcing them in the U.S." And I was like, "I don't believe it." And like
yeah.
it turned out weeks down the line that they found out they were sourcing them from China.
So there's just these shops that pretend like they have equipment, and then they're just the middleman.
I mean, I think they had equipment, but I think that they were subsidizing some work out of the country,
Okay,
like for larger stuff to either, I don't know if it was to get a customer or to just, you know, never say no to a customer. Or I really, I don't understand. I don't know why they were doing it like that, but that's what they were doing. And it was super frustrating.
yeah, that's kind of annoying, knowing that you have to look out for that type of stuff.
Yeah. Well, and like a lot of that work ends up coming back because it ends up being garbage, and then they have to send it to a U.S. shop to get it fixed or remade, and that's when you try to make your money back.
Yeah, that's weird though.
Yeah, like I've worked on like plastic housings that were sent overseas. They were like for a real expensive some kind of underwater electronic system at my first job, and they didn't go with the more expensive US thing, and so there ended up being all these holes missing and all
Oh,
kinds of
jeez.
stuff wrong, and so we ended up having to create custom fixtures to hold them and indicate each one in and cut these holes in these tight tolerance counter bores. And it was at the time one of the more nerve-wracking experiences I had, because I had zero extras, and they were even coming from China, they were like super expensive.
Huh.
I don't think they were injection molded. Can't remember how they were created, but they were fairly intricate, and like, man, it was super nerve wracking because they were plastic and thin wall and vibrate all over the place if you didn't clamp them right. So it was, but I learned a lot, and I also learned that you go to China and you're going to pay for it one way or the other.
Yeah, man, not having a spare, that'd be stressful.
Yeah, it's not the first time at that shop that I had at one point these 3D printed titanium. I think it was called TZM metal or something like that. It's some weird titanium molybdenum uh, composite thing. It's titanium, zirconium, and molybdenum, and it was like 3D printed, and I had to thread mill 440 threads in it, and I
Jesus.
had zero extras of it, and it was like 4 threads per part. Oh, it was like the most. I think it was the first time I had ever thread milled too. Like my boss
Oh
was like,
my
"I think
god,
you can do
don't do
this.
that to
You
me.
should do this," and I was like, "I don't think I should do this. I think you should give it to somebody more experienced." He was like, "No, you can do this."
Oh my
Um,
god.
yeah, my first boss was like really good about forcing me to learn. Like
I
I
guess.
yeah. Well, like his saying to me all the time, like from the, like, I don't know, this first or second day I started there, he was like, "Would you hurry up and screw up so I can start trusting you already?" because
That's awesome.
he knew I was going to screw up. He knew I was going to make mistakes, and he just wanted me to make as many like low cost mistakes as I possibly could quickly, so that way he could start trusting me because he knew that I got it. Like he could see very early on, like, oh, once he like kind of learns his way around the shop, like he'll be good. And so
Yeah.
it was a really good place to learn and grow in. And like I remember my first big crash is I plowed a face mill into these hardened jaws because
Jesus.
they were like, so that we had these they were hardened jaw carriers with like a half-inch by half-inch aluminum strip that you would bolt down into the hardened carrier. So it was like
Okay.
a tiny soft jaw. Like they were really good for plate work and things like that because you cut a small step in them and then use them for plates. And I was super green and just starting to feel like I was kind of starting to know my stuff. And I cut the step with the face mill in there. And I was like, oh, well, I don't need to set the Z. I can just set the Z from where my current Z position is, not remembering that there's also going to be a height offset applied to the face mill. And
Yeah.
so I put my first plate in and, single block. And what I thought was the 2-inch clearance plane was actually like the 100 thou, or how was it? And anyway, I single blocked it. It looked okay. I wasn't really paying attention to my distance to go at that point because I was so new. And I hit go, and it feeds down into the part at 100 inches a minute, and it just
Oh.
feeds into these jaws before I
Oh
can hit
my
the e-stop.
God.
And of course, everybody in the shop is just looking over at me, and it's just like shaking their head, kind of smiling. And so I had to like walk into my boss's office with this messed up face mill and just be like, I'm so sorry. I made a stupid mistake. I know exactly what I did. And his only thing was like, well, now you get to go find out what the cost of tooling is. And he like made me go sit down and research how much the body was and like all the inserts and stuff. And like, he didn't, have me pay for it or anything, which was really nice. But he wanted me to know what the cost of mistakes were. And he ended up being able to stone out the seats for the face mill. And we weren't using it for mirror finishes anymore, but it worked as a roughing face mill. And so overall, it was not the worst mistake I could have made, but man, it was, it was scary enough that, you start learning real quick when you make those things.
Yeah. Live and learn. I mean,
Yeah.
that's the only way you can do it.
What was your first big crash that you can remember?
I've never crashed. What are you talking about?
Yeah. Okay.
No, actually, let's see. During school, I only like broke a tool, and that's because I was trying to push it as hard as I could, and it was just like a 3/8 end mill. And then, other than like, if you remember, I rubbed that collet nut into my mold. Um,
Oh,
but
right. Yeah.
other than that, I haven't had like a Z crash, thankfully, um, really at all.
That's good. That's
I
really
mean,
good.
I've broken some half-inch end mills off in like a live tooling lathe, but other than that, you
Oh, that
know,
must have been a little frightening.
yeah, especially in steel, it's kind of scary. Yeah, but other than that, I've been pretty careful, I would say, and I mean, yeah, I've seen people crash like I've been to the machine right next to me and they've done a Z crash into the vise, and I'm just like, yeah, I'm not doing that. Like, no.
Oh,
Um,
yeah. Yeah. No, I've seen some really horrific crashes. Like mine wasn't that bad. The servos didn't even trip or anything.
yeah.
But I've seen people like index fourth axis and a horizontal into the spindle.
Oh no.
Yeah, like some really horrific crashes. And like like a glutton for punishment, so I like watch all of the CNC crash videos on
Oh
YouTube,
yeah.
both cringing and also trying to learn. So it's like, oh well, I have seen that mistake, so now I don't need to make that mistake.
Yeah. Actually, I take that back. I did crash a Swiss lathe.
Oh no.
um, it was weird because it was like a tie off. Like the day shift guy was leaving, and he was like, "Peyton, you're gonna run this, and this machine." I'm like, "Okay." And he's like, "I just finished setting this one up. It's running good." And on a Swiss machine, you have a button that's like automatic mode. It basically toggles the M99 on and off.
Hmm.
So you can just press that, and then once the cycle's done, you can open it up, check, grab your part, check it, and then just hit it again, and it'll just keep looping. And so he hit that button, so it stopped. I came over there, edit reset memory, cycle start, hit the loop button, and it did the first part. I saw the parts catcher come up, and it started doing work on the sub, and I'm like, why isn't the part catcher retracting? And it just kept
Oh,
going and going, and I'm like, it better retract that parts catcher, and it didn't. And then the sub goes to go forward to transfer, and it just like, luckily I stopped it. I was right there. I was like waiting for it to happen, and for whatever reason, we have no idea why it didn't retract. We don't know if it was like an M code issue, or I think it was the actual like little air cylinder that pushed the parts catcher. But it was kind of like, oh yeah, that happened.
oh, that's
Um,
terrible.
yeah, no tools broke or anything, but it was just like one of the. It wasn't a loud noise, but it was just like, oh shit, type thing.
Right. Yeah, that reminds me. Speaking of like machine malfunctions, I feel like I've had more machine malfunctions than crashes. Like
Mm-hmm.
I've had maybe, I don't know, less what I would call like I don't really count like snapping off a tool a crash.
Yeah,
It's I guess I call it a crash if I like rapided through the part with it, but like
yeah.
tools break, that's not a big deal. But like one time, another face mill actually in that first shop, we had this one machine that it lost parameters, and so we had to re-input all the parameters. Everything seemed like it worked fine. We checked like all of the parameters were identical to the ones we had just offloaded like 2 weeks before it lost its memory, and
Okay.
all of a sudden, if you reset or stopped a cycle in the middle of something and didn't home all the axes, it had lost its zero position and would go incrementally from wherever you started the next program.
Oh geez.
So one time, like thankfully I caught it, I don't know, maybe 20 thou into the cut, but I had like stopped the spindle like, I don't know, 10 seconds into the program. Like it had just positioned in X and Y and started coming down in Z. And I stopped it for some reason, maybe to tighten the vise again or to check the part was down. I don't know. I can't remember, but I do remember hitting the green button, watching it rapid half an inch or 3/4 of an inch further in Z down further than it should have been, and try to take like a 500 or 600 thou cut with this face mill that had maybe 200 or 300 thou of flute. And like I said, it didn't make it more than like I heard this first split second and immediately hit the e stop, but we could not figure it out for the life of me because of course after then I reset it and rehomed everything and tried it again, and I was like, well, it's gone. And it took us, I don't know, months until we finally realized that it was moving incrementally from wherever you had stopped it.
Huh.
And it was, I mean, this was a 84 machine, 85.
Okay.
So they all had little gremlins and stuff, like weird stuff happened from time to time. Um, not all that often, but when you've got 12 machines that are that old, you see every possible way that it can possibly fail. So
Yeah, that's true.
yeah, but it was definitely a learning experience. I feel like I'm much more skittish around machines because I started in a shop with old machines than people who are like, oh yeah, well I grew up on a 2010 Haas. It's like
Yeah.
it always does what I tell it to. Though
That's why.
I've
Oh,
heard
go
of
ahead.
people. Well, I was gonna say I've heard of people with the next gen control just like losing tool offsets randomly. I don't know if they fixed that or not, but there has been a few people on Instagram that have said that.
You know, as far as the next gen control, I love it. Um, it does lag every now and then. Like one time I did an edit reset memory. You know how you just get so quick at doing that? Um, edit reset memory cycle start, and then like it froze, and then like in like a second later it started the program, which was just kind of scary. Um, and then one time I was setting a tool, and I have that little Edge Precision tool setter, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I brought it down, zeroed it out, so the tool's where I want it to be. And I go to tool or offsets, and then you hit the tool offset measure on a Haas, and the machine always highlights the tool that's in the spindle. So like if you have tool 1 in your spindle, when you go to offsets, it's already highlighted. And this time, let's say for talking purposes, I had tool 5 in, but it was highlighting tool 1. And luckily, I saw that when I hit tool offset measure, and I saw tool one's number change and not tool five's, and I was like, "Whoa,
Oh, geez, yeah, that could have been a bad one.
yeah." And so now every time I just before I hit that button, I'm just looking at that control, just verifying.
Yeah,
Um, but yeah, then what I was gonna say is I'm grateful that I worked at my most previous day job because they had a bunch of old machines because I had never really had experience other than the older Swiss machines. But like they had that old MV40. They had it was like 2005 Heidenhain controlled DMU 50 and DMU 50 Evo 5-axis machines, um, which I don't know if it was just those machines, but I do not like Heidenhain
I've never
at
played
all.
one with one. I've had a little bit of experience with a Siemens, but I've never had the pleasure or not to play with a Heidenhain yet.
I don't know if it was just the older version or I just didn't have enough like training because the operators there really didn't know what I wanted to know. I'm like, oh, how do you do macros and like all the cool stuff? And they're just like, we just know how to push the button. And I'm like, okay. Um, so it was kind of hard to learn there. And I don't like reading manuals. I like watching someone do it and doing it myself type thing.
Oh, gotcha.
Um, but
I've heard
yeah,
that people are like really specific when it comes to their 5-axis controls too. Like it's like it's the same kind of animosity towards the other side as like what's your favorite indicator or what's your favorite whatever machining wise, or like
yeah,
it seems like if you're a Heidenhain guy, you're a Heidenhain guy through and through, and you think that Siemens controls are shit, and if you're a
yep.
Siemens guy, it's the exact opposite. So it's like I know they just got a DMU 50 with a Siemens at my local community college, like maybe a few
Whoa,
months ago. Yeah,
that's awesome.
they just got a whole bunch of DMG stuff. They have
Jeez.
an NLX 2500 with a sub spindle and live
Yep.
tooling. They've got the DMU, and then they got a CMX 1100 with a fourth axis.
Okay.
And like it's the biggest upgrade they've had in a long time because they had fairly old Haas's there that were getting tired and needed to be changed out. So it was fantastic for them. But my teacher, who I'm good friends with there, said that when the guys who would come service the DMU, there was one that was a real big Heidenhain guy and one that was a real big Siemens guy, and then he also had like the Siemens rep come through, and they would just talk so much bad about each other and like say
Yeah.
like, oh well, they can't do real 5-axis, only we can do real 5-axis, or like
Yep.
we do this better than they do, and like it's just funny.
The issue that we had at our shop is our machine at the old job, it was like production. One of them literally ran the same part 8 hours a day, like every day, like same exact thing. Um, and the issue we had is the service techs didn't know Heidenhain barely at all.
Oh really?
They were so used to just the Celos control, or I don't think DMG has Fanic, do they? I don't think so.
I don't think on their 5-axis they do.
Yeah, so they were just used to like the new Celos control, and so they were struggling to get through some of this Heidenhain stuff. They had to kept calling people in like California that spoke German and like all sorts of crazy stuff, just to like do some basic things. So that was a huge hurdle, and they hated coming out to us to work on them just for that reason.
Jeez.
So
Well, now it's gone completely wacky too, because now DMG is doing all of their service in house and not
yep,
through resellers, and so I know like that whole changeover happened right as the community college here got their DMG stuff, and so like getting service and making sure that everything was working was becoming a real hassle because they just didn't have the service techs that they needed at the time.
yeah,
So I think it's getting better now, but still, it was pretty crazy to watch.
yeah. All right. Well, should we wrap it up there after talking about some dream machines?
Yeah, seriously. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that's a good place to end a quicker episode than last week, but we'll be back next week with some more.
Yep. I think I would like to do one more week, just us, and then maybe offline, me and you can talk about if we want to have another guest on. So for everyone out there, watch out for that.
Yeah, and give us some suggestions on who you want to see on the show.
Yeah, definitely shoot us messages on Instagram or comments or whatnot, and then make sure you follow us on Instagram within Tolerance Podcast. I think we're up to like 215 followers or something.
Something like that, yeah. And it seems to reflect pretty accurately about our audience as well. So
Yeah,
thanks
so
for
that's
all of you
awesome.
joining and listening along. It's awesome having this many people want to join in our conversations.
Yeah, so once again, thank you guys for tuning in and listening. We'll be back next week with episode 10. And make sure you guys leave us a review on Apple and iTunes and all that good stuff. And then make sure you post about us on Instagram stories. We'll be sure to repost that. And we'll see you guys next week. All right, guys.
Yep. Have a good night.